The statement that swallows itself. We now arrive at the place where language begins to unravel itself, not from poor grammar or nonsense, but from too much meaning, spiraling inward like a snake devouring its own tail. It begins with a sentence, seemingly harmless, even childlike in its simplicity. This statement is false. You've heard it before, maybe in passing, maybe as a philosophical joke. But here, in this room with no windows and a single flickering bulb, let's sit with it. Let's really sit with it. This statement is false. If it's false, then it's true. But if it's true, then it must be false. And if it's false again, then it's true again. What you've entered isn't confusion. It's recursion. A statement that refers to itself, trying to define itself, collapsing under its own weight. A loop not of logic, but of self-devouring certainty. This is the liar paradox, one of the oldest traps known to language and thought, but calling it a trap makes it sound like there's a way out. There isn't. It's a self-referencing black hole. No matter where you begin, you end where you started, only more uncertain. Think of it like a maze that leads back to its entrance, no matter which path you choose. This statement is false, a contradiction that cannot be resolved, a mirror in a mirror, a thought that devours the thinker. And yet, it's not just a novelty, not just a mental toy to pass the time. Embedded in this paradox is something darker, the seed of collapse. 4. If a system allows a sentence that breaks the rules of truth and falsity, then the system itself becomes unstable. Language, logic, mathematics. If they allow for contradictions like this, then what else is built on sand? Your brain, right now, is trying to fix it. That's the horror. You are trying to make it make sense, not because you care about the sentence, but because you need the world to be coherent. If statements can be both true and false, then laws fail, science cracks, identity liquefies. But the paradox doesn't need to resolve. It only needs to exist. That's its weapon. It survives by surviving your attempts to kill it. Take it deeper. What if we apply this paradox to your thoughts? Have you ever told yourself, "I always lie"? If that's true, then it's a lie. And if it's a lie, then you don't always lie, which makes it true. The moment you become the paradox, your sense of self fractures. Are you honest? Are you dishonest? You can't be both, but you are. You've said so. We do this more often than we realize. I don't care what people think, you say, while craving their approval. I'm not afraid, you whisper, while your heart races. I understand, you insist, when everything inside you is begging for meaning. Lies that might be true. Truths that might be lies. Statements that unravel the speaker the moment they're spoken. Here's a darker twist. What happens when a machine says, "This machine will never obey this command"? If it's telling the truth, then it must disobey, making the statement false. But if it's lying, then it must obey, making it true. Even in artificial intelligence, the recursion devours itself. The moment a system can comment on its own behavior, it risks creating loops that freeze it in paradox, and now the walls close in. Because you too are a self-referencing system. You think about your thoughts, you judge your judgments, you form opinions about your own opinions, you believe things about the nature of your beliefs. You are a loop pretending to be a straight line. And when the loop breaks, when self-reference becomes self-doubt, you fall into the infinite regression of paradox. It starts small. I'm confident I'm uncertain. I know that I know nothing. I trust that I can't trust. Each sentence makes intuitive sense, yet fractures under scrutiny. How can you know that you don't know? That's knowing. How can you trust your own distrust? That's trust. The sentences betray themselves the moment they are believed, and yet you believe them anyway, because not believing them leads to the same place. Let's descend further. A man writes a book titled "All Books Are Lies." You read it. Is it a lie? If it is, then maybe all books aren't lies. But if all books are lies, then this one is too. So which is it? You can't decide. Because the book isn't trying to tell you something. It's trying to infect you. Infect you with self-reference so strong that your logic turns inward and starts feeding on itself. You are now infected. You've likely already begun to notice the signs, your thoughts spiraling, your mind trying to pick a side, then slipping through the cracks. And that's exactly what the paradox wants. It doesn't care about truth. It's a predator of certainty. It waits for you to step into its web, and, once you do, it pulls not on facts or emotions, but on the very structure of understanding itself. So let's try to escape. Let's imagine a world where every statement is either true or false, clean, binary, controlled. That was the dream of logic. But this paradox, it shatters that dream. It reminds you that even at the foundation of reason, there are loops that cannot be untied. And if reason breaks, what's left? If you can't trust a sentence to be either true or false, can you trust your thoughts, your memories, your sensations? Every time you say, "I know this is real," you're speaking a statement about the world. What if that statement is false? But if it's false, then you don't know it's real, which might make it true, which makes it false. You're back in the loop. You never left. And now the final blade. Suppose someone tells you, "Everything I say is a lie." You pause. Try to analyze it. But what if that statement wasn't for you to solve, but to plant? A virus in your mind, a loop, a seed. One that, even now, is spreading through every sentence you've ever trusted. If someone can say one thing that unravels logic itself, then logic was never safe. What if the world is built not on truth, but on loops we agree to ignore? What if self-reference is not an error, but the source code? What if your mind is already caught in a statement that swallows itself, and worse, what if you're the statement? The paradox of the never-ending now you are here, right now. You feel the present sliding across your mind like a razor's edge, an ever-advancing blade that separates what was from what will be. But have you ever caught it? Truly caught it? The present, that is. The now. You say, "I am here now." But even as you speak it, the moment is gone. Already a memory. Already part of the past. So where is the present if it vanishes the moment you try to see it? You live your entire life in this ghost, this now that never holds still long enough to be real. And that is the paradox. The present moment is all that ever exists, and yet it never exists. Try to hold it, and it slips. Try to measure it, and it's gone. The more you chase it, the faster it recedes, like a horizon that expands with every step, forever out of reach. You assume time flows like a river. But what if that river is an illusion? What if the flow is nothing more than the decay of your memory and the anticipation of a future that never arrives? You remember the past. You expect the future. But the present is a void, a pinpoint with no width, no depth, no substance, and yet you are told you live in it. Does that make sense? If the present has no duration, then you're never in it. You only flicker between echoes and predictions, a being, smeared across a timeline it can never fully inhabit. Your existence is like trying to balance on the blade of a knife, knowing you're always falling into what has already passed, or tumbling toward what hasn't yet occurred. And yet, here you are, telling yourself you are in the moment. But which one? We try to solve this with metaphors, flow, continuity, motion. But motion itself relies on a paradox. To move, something must occupy different positions at different times. But in any given instant, the so-called now, the object is frozen, stopped, unmoving. So how does it get from one point to another if it never moves in the present? This is Zeno's arrow paradox, an ancient thought trap that's still sharp enough to bleed you today. If an arrow is flying through the air, then at every instant of time, it occupies a single space. It is, at that instant, motionless. So how? Is motion possible at all if every now is just a still photograph? Take your own life. Imagine it as a film strip, frame by frame. Each moment, each now, is just an image. No movement, no progression. And yet, you feel movement, you feel time. But that feeling, what is it? A trick, a continuity your brain stitches together like a hallucination made of memories. What if the sense of time passing is just an illusion your consciousness creates to maintain narrative? What if your past and future are just bookmarks in a novel you didn't write? You're not moving through time. Time is moving through you. Or worse, you're standing still while time fractures around you into incomprehensible shards of false continuity. You aren't in time. You are time. And you are unraveling. The real horror isn't that time passes. The horror is that it might not be passing at all. Imagine this. Everything that has ever happened and ever will exists all at once. The entire timeline, beginning, middle, end, laid out like a frozen sculpture. You are not traveling through it. You are a fixed point, a static part of the whole. Your birth and death already etched into the structure of reality. You just experience it sequentially because that's how your mind processes information. Like a needle dragged across a vinyl record, one groove at a time. But the record isn't playing. It's already complete. You're just reading the moments, one after the other. Like flipping through pages of a story where the end was written before the first word. And that brings us to the deeper paradox, the block universe. A model of time in which past, present, and future all coexist equally. There is no now, no flowing present, only a timeless, unchanging, four-dimensional block. In this model, your sense of now is nothing more than your consciousness lighting up a particular slice of the block, like a flashlight illuminating a single room in a house that was built before you were born and will stand long after you die. You think you're making choices. You think you're moving forward. But forward implies direction, and direction implies change. In the block universe, there is no change, only the illusion of it. You are not becoming. You already are. Every thought, every action, every decision you think you're making in this moment has already been made. Etched into the geometry of space-time, immutable, permanent, done. Feel the panic setting in? You are not a wave. You are a particle locked in position, dreaming of motion. The trap tightens. What does this do to your sense of free will? If the present doesn't really exist, and the future is as fixed as the past, then what are you choosing? Are your thoughts truly yours? Or are they just the next pre-written frame in the sequence, giving you the illusion of spontaneity while marching you toward an end you cannot escape? And yet, here comes the twist. The paradox refuses to resolve. Because while physics hints at a timeless reality, your conscious experience screams otherwise. You feel time, you remember, you anticipate, you change. But what if that feeling is just a bug in the brain, an artifact of evolution? A lie you evolved to believe so you wouldn't collapse under the weight of your own stasis. The present moment, the sacred now, might just be the crack in the simulation. The point where perception and reality fail to align. A wound in the structure of experience. Now return to yourself. Focus. Where are you right now? The words you are reading exist in your present, but they were written in the past, and yet they feel immediate. You are seeing the ghost of someone else's moment, wrapped in the illusion of now. But even that illusion is gone the instant your eyes leave each word. The moment dissolves, frame by frame, second by second. And still, you tell yourself you're living in the moment. So ask yourself, what is now if it's already gone? What are you if you never actually inhabit the only moment you think you live in? And if the present doesn't exist? Where are you really? The reflection that remembers you. You stand before a mirror. The glass is silent, neutral, still. It does nothing, says nothing, only returns what it is given, or so you believe. You raise your hand, and your reflection obeys. You smile, and it grins back. Perfect symmetry, instant response. But have you ever wondered why it feels so eerily compliant? Why the version of you trapped in that polished surface never speaks first, never makes the first move? You assume it is passive, a slave to your motion. But what if you're wrong? What if you are not its master, but its echo? Now imagine this. One night, long after you've forgotten what time it is, you glance into the mirror and something's off. Imperceptibly, almost invisibly, the delay between you and it widens. A nanosecond, a flicker, a breath, but it's there, and it remembers you. Not as you are, but as you were, a frame behind, a second late. And suddenly, it feels less like a mirror, and more like a window. But a window to what? You're not seeing your reflection, you're seeing your past. Always your past. The speed of light, the time it takes for the image to bounce and return. It ensures that what you see is never truly present. It's a ghost of who you were a moment ago. And this raises a harrowing question. If your reflection is always a past version of you, then where is now? But let's go deeper. Mirrors don't just reflect light, they reflect identity. They present the illusion of you, framed by certainty. But what if that illusion is paper thin? What if the you in the mirror isn't just an echo of your body, but a fragment of your consciousness? A parasite thought form that mimics you perfectly. Until it doesn't, close your eyes. Picture a hallway lined with mirrors on both sides, stretching into infinity. You are standing between them, caught in a cascade of infinite selves, each reflection reflecting the next. An eternal recursion of identity. But here's the paradox. If each copy is reflecting a slightly older version of you, each separated by infinitesimal delays, then which version is real? Which one is you? You are no longer oneself, but a symphony of selves, each trailing slightly behind the next. And as they drift further from the original, the copies start to decay. Like carbon reproductions losing clarity with each print, the final reflection, miles down the chain, is no longer recognizable. It is you, and it is not you. A warped echo of a self that once was. Now ask, where is the line between self and simulation? This is the infinite reflection paradox, and it eats at the foundation of your identity. Because if your self-image is always slightly outdated, if your reflection is always a step behind, then you're never seeing who you are, only who you were. Every mirror you look into is a time machine, a reminder that you are always lagging behind yourself. And in a world where perception shapes reality, what happens when you begin to mistake the echo for the origin? Look closer. What if one day your reflection blinks, but you don't? What if it smiles? A second too soon? What if it decides to disagree? The terror lies not in it happening, but in the fact that you wouldn't notice when it does, not at first, because your brain is a master of narrative stitching. It bridges gaps, it smooths over ruptures, it sees what it expects to see. So when your reflection starts to drift from you, when it becomes subtly autonomous, you will rationalize it, a trick of light, fatigue, stress, and so the betrayal deepens. But perhaps the mirror has always been lying. Think of Narcissus, falling in love with his reflection. He didn't fall for himself. He fell for an idea of himself, a version locked behind the glass, forever out of reach. And you do the same. You don't see yourself. You see a version of you filtered by symmetry, by inversion, by latency, a reverse, delayed self. Always not quite you, yet you believe in it. You consult it. You trust it. But what if it's watching you, even when you're not looking? Here's the twist. If your reflection remembers you, and if it has seen everything you've ever done before every mirror you've ever faced, then it may know things you have forgotten. It may carry the residue of 100 gestures, expressions, and confessions you thought were private. You've cried in front of mirrors, screamed, practiced apologies, lied to yourself, all while staring into your own eyes, and the reflection was there, watching, recording, waiting. What if, behind the stillness, it remembers? And more than that, what if it judges? There's a theory in psychological horror known as the doppelganger delusion. It suggests that if you ever meet a perfect copy of yourself, you will spiral into psychosis. Why? Because the self cannot endure seeing its own contradiction. The idea that something could be you and yet exist outside you collapses the ego into fragments. The mirror, then, is the closest you ever come to your own destruction, and yet you face it daily, thinking it harmless. But suppose there's a deeper version of this delusion, one not limited to sight, but to cognition. What if there exists within your consciousness a mirror of the mind, a self-model that reflects your every intention, your every future act before it manifests, a voice you call inner thought, but which may actually be an observer, watching, predicting, and shaping you in ways you cannot trace. It speaks, in your own tone, it uses your logic, but it may not be you. Just like the reflection, it echoes with delay. And when that inner reflection begins to diverge, when your thoughts no longer align with the ones you expect to have, what then? You tell yourself, I'm changing, but what if the change isn't yours? What if the reflection has taken root? You have always thought of your reflection as reactive, but what if it's reacting because it's alive? What if mirrors aren't surfaces but portals, membranes between overlapping timelines, where one version of you escaped into the glass and is waiting, patiently, to return? And when you look away, when you stop watching, it takes your place. So now ask yourself, when was the last time you saw your reflection blink? When was the last time it truly followed your lead? And what if, right now, the you reading this isn't the original? What if you are the reflection, the cause that birthed its own effects? Somewhere in your life, perhaps recently, perhaps long ago, you felt it. A moment where something happened and you couldn't explain why. A shiver down your spine when no wind stirred. A phone call from someone you were just thinking about. An uncanny decision that felt less like a choice and more like a pre-written line in a script you hadn't agreed to perform. We call them coincidences, anomalies, glitches. But what if they're not errors? What if they are intentional misfires in the structure of time itself? Now imagine this. You're walking through a familiar hallway. You trip on the corner of a rug and a vase falls, shatters. Your pulse spikes. You sigh, clean it up, and think little of it. But as you sweep, you find something odd. Beneath the shards is a note written in your own handwriting. Be careful with the rug. Dated yesterday. You don't remember writing it. You don't remember knowing. But the warning exists. After the fall. After the moment. The message arrived too late, or perhaps just in time. You've entered the realm of the bootstrap paradox, a sickening loop in which cause and effect collapse into one another. A future event causes a past event that caused the future event in the first place. You become trapped in a circle with no beginning, no origin. The question, which came first, the cause or the effect, evaporates into meaninglessness. Consider this. A physicist receives a blueprint for a time machine anonymously. He builds it. It works. He travels back and hands the blueprint to his younger self. The younger self becomes the older self, builds it again, hands it down again. Where did the blueprint come from? Who created it? The answer is horrifying. No one. The information was never created. It merely loops through time, indefinitely. No beginning, no source. Like an echo bouncing through an empty canyon with no original voice. What if your life is filled with such loops? Decisions that weren't yours. Ideas that appeared in your head, fully formed. Dreams that bled into waking thought. Are you sure every thought you've had was authored by you? Or did some of them arrive? The universe, you see, has no obligation to function linearly. That's a rule you imposed. Your nervous system demands a sequence, a before and after, to survive. But reality may not honor that. In fact, it may mock it. What if the thing you fear most tomorrow is the reason you dream of it tonight? What if your regret over a mistake you haven't yet made is already influencing you now, subtly, guiding your steps toward the very error you will soon grieve? You might think, that's just anticipation, anxiety. But anxiety assumes you're imagining a possible outcome. The bootstrap paradox whispers something darker. You're remembering an event from a future that has already happened, and in remembering it, you bring it into being. The future leaks backward, and you, poor creature of cause and consequence, are caught between the gears. Let's peel another layer. Say a woman writes a song, a haunting melody that seems to come to her in a dream. She records it, releases it, it spreads. Years later, a young girl hears it for the first time and becomes obsessed. She learns to play it, note for note. As she grows older, she becomes a composer. One day, decades later, she composes a similar tune, just slightly different, and dreams of passing it down. She records it. It reaches a woman who wakes from a dream and writes the song. You see it, don't you? The song has no beginning, no composer. It simply exists, looping through time, feeding itself, escaping causality, a closed loop of originless what. So now the dread creeps in. How much of your life is self-contained? How many loops have you walked without knowing? Ever felt déjà vu so strong it paralyzed you? Ever had a conversation where you knew the next word before it was spoken? What if you weren't predicting it, but remembering it? Because here's the insidious truth. Memory doesn't care about time. It just holds what it's given. And if the future can bleed into your present, then memory becomes a betrayal, a thing that cannot be trusted to tell you what has already happened versus what will happen soon. Now take this thought to its horrifying conclusion. What if you are alive, not because your parents birthed you, but because your future self traveled back and caused their meeting? What if your existence is the product of your own choices, made in a timeline you haven't yet reached? You could be the echo of a future event, walking backward toward your origin. Your death might already have happened. Your birth might be its effect. This isn't fantasy. The laws of quantum mechanics allow particles to influence their past states. Retrocausality, it's called. A world where particles react not just to what has happened, but to what will happen. You are made of these particles. Why should your mind be immune? And suddenly, you remember those moments, those terrible electric flashes, where it felt like someone else was making your decisions, where your body moved before your mind caught up, where you knew what was going to happen, but couldn't stop it. That was not instinct. That was not luck. That was causality unraveling in your hands. Because deep down, you are not moving through time. Time is moving through you. You are the tunnel through which events flow in reverse. You are the corridor through which tomorrow becomes yesterday. And every moment of hesitation, every fractured decision, every accidental slip of tongue or foot could be the echo of something yet to arrive. So the next time you trip and catch yourself a second too late, ask, did I fall because I was clumsy? Or did I fall because I was meant to? And if I was meant to, who decided that? Was it me, or was it the me I haven't become yet? The observer's curse. There's a cruel trick your eyes play on you, an illusion far more sinister than anything born of mirrors or shadows. You believe you observe the world, that you see it objectively, that things exist whether or not you are looking at them, that a tree falls in the forest whether or not you're there to hear it. But what if that belief is not only false, but delusional? What if the world doesn't exist until you look at it? What if looking changes reality in ways you can't reverse? Welcome to the abyss of the observer effect, the terrifying reality that simply by watching, you may be changing the very thing you seek to understand. And when paired with the mind-bending absurdity of quantum indeterminacy, the trap tightens. Observation doesn't just influence reality, it creates it. Take the infamous double-slit experiment. A particle, say an electron, is fired at a barrier with two slits. Behind the barrier, a screen captures where the electron lands. Fire a single particle. It acts like a wave, interfering with itself, forming a pattern on the screen. But the moment you observe which slit it goes through, the wave collapses. The electron picks a side. The interference pattern vanishes. It stops behaving like a wave and starts behaving like a particle. Just because you watched. Reality bends to your gaze. And now the question. Was it ever a wave to begin with? Or did your very act of observation force it to become something it was not? Take a breath. You might be thinking this is microscopic stuff. Electrons, particles, abstract science. But you are made of those particles. Every atom in your body follows the same laws, which means your consciousness, your thoughts, your sense of self, is shackled to a universe that responds to observation like a frightened animal, skittish, unpredictable, and disturbingly obedient. What if the world around you doesn't exist until you observe it? What if the moon is not there when you're not looking? What if your friends cease to exist the moment they leave your line of sight, only to reform as soon as you check your phone? It sounds ridiculous, until you realize your brain has always lied to you about what's real. The blind spot in your eye is filled with guesses. Your dreams feel real until you wake. You construct continuity from broken signals and assume it's truth. But there's a deeper horror lurking beneath. What if observation doesn't merely collapse reality? What if it destroys possibilities? Think of Schrödinger's cat, the infamous thought experiment. A cat sealed in a box with a mechanism that may or may not kill it, depending on a quantum event. Until the box is opened, the cat is both dead and alive. A superposition, a liminal state. But the moment you open the box, you force one outcome. The cat is either dead or it is not. By looking, you have collapsed infinite possibilities into one. This is not a metaphor. This is the architecture of reality. Every observation you make is a choice, a cut through the web of potential, a sacrifice of all that could have been for the narrow slit of what is. You are not a passive observer. You are an executioner of potential. And yet, you cannot help but look. You are addicted to perception. You stare into the void, hoping it will reflect meaning. But what if the void only exists because you're staring? And what if every time you look deeper, you are not uncovering the truth, but inventing it? What then becomes of truth? Suppose you're walking alone at night. You hear a sound behind you. You turn. Nothing. Was there ever anything? Or did your attention create the silence? Did your gaze reach backward through time and erase what might have been? Could your fear have unhappened a footstep? Extend this terror further. What if other people are not real until you observe them? What if their thoughts, their memories, their lives all blink into existence only when you're around to see them? Are they sentient? Or are they vessels of probability, collapsing into form under your gaze like particles through slits? And then, what about you? You look in the mirror and see a face. But who's to say that face existed the moment before you saw it? Do you exist when no one's watching? Or do you dissolve into possibility, only to coalesce again when another's eyes fall on you? There's an ancient fear buried in this idea, the fear of solipsism, that you are the only consciousness, that the universe is your prison and your stage, that everything and everyone else is just a projection, a cruel theatre of reflections, manufactured for your amusement or your punishment. And quantum theory, with all its baffling elegance, refuses to save you from that fear. It does not say reality exists independently. It says, until it is measured, it is undefined, not hidden, not secret. Undefined. Which means your past might not have happened until you remembered it. Your future might not be written until you look for it. Your reality might not be real until you decide it is. But can you truly decide? Or is the decision just another illusion, another mask worn by the randomness of quantum collapse? Even your thoughts might be subject to this observer trap. Ever have an intrusive thought so violent, so out of place, you wondered, why did I think that? But what if you didn't think it until you noticed it? What if you were both the cause and the destroyer of the thought, its author and its censor, simultaneously? You stare into the paradox long enough, and it stares back, reshaped by your scrutiny. The question lingers like an afterimage. If observing the universe creates it, what happens when the universe starts observing? You, who is doing the watching now, and why do you suddenly feel like you're being watched? The mirror that watches itself. There's a particular type of dread that doesn't arrive with screams or shadows, but with a silence so total it drowns you. It begins not with a question, but with the echo of one. Am I aware that I'm aware? And the moment that thought surfaces, it replicates, splitting into infinite layers, each watching the next, each one a reflection of the last. You are no longer thinking. You are thinking about thinking, and then thinking about that. The recursive spiral has begun. This is the paradox of self-observation, an ouroboros of awareness that consumes itself while trying to understand itself. The mind turns inward in search of its own source and finds only a hall of mirrors, endlessly reflecting nothing. Ask yourself, what is the self that is doing the watching? When you become aware of your thoughts, who is doing the noticing? You might say, I am. But who is this I? Is it the voice narrating your thoughts, or the silent witness behind that voice? And if you listen for that silence, if you attempt to observe the observer, you'll notice something horrifying. The moment you look, it retreats. The observer cannot observe itself without splitting in two. Awareness becomes a fracture. You are never just thinking, you are thinking about thinking. And if you try to peel away the layers to find the core of your consciousness, you will discover there is none. Only layers, only recursion. Imagine standing between two mirrors. Look ahead, and your reflection stretches to infinity. Each image, smaller than the last, each slightly offset. You cannot step into those mirrored selves. You can only see the surfaces. So it is with your thoughts. You cannot touch the origin, only the iterations. But what if you went far enough down the chain? What if buried in the deepest mirror, there was an image that wasn't quite you? A version with its own awareness, looking back, but not just at you, through you. This is the terror of metaconsciousness, when your awareness becomes aware of itself to such a degree that it loses all grounding. The self begins to disintegrate under its own scrutiny. You start to question if your thoughts are even yours, or merely performances for an unseen audience within. Every decision you make suddenly feels artificial, curated for a watcher behind the watcher. But who is this ultimate observer? And here's the loop you can't escape. To find the true self, you must observe. But the act of observation divides you. You create a false self by the very effort to find a real one. It's like trying to hear the source of a sound by shouting over it. There is no true thought, only commentary on the thought. No action, only awareness of the action. You become a voyeur of your own life, trapped in a cage of mirrors you built just by being conscious. And consciousness, in its most disturbing form, might not even be real. It might be an illusion, a clever trick of attention and feedback loops, no different from the way your eye pretends to see continuity in a film made of still images. So here's the deeper paradox. What if you don't have a self at all? What if your entire identity is the product of recursive thought, an endless loop with no origin? You believe you are you because you keep thinking about being you. You maintain the illusion through repetition, but break the loop, turn your awareness away for a second, and what remains? There are moments, perhaps, when this happens. Ever walk into a room and forget why you're there? Not just the purpose, but the feeling of being you. Or stare at your own name written down and feel it dissolve into meaningless symbols. These are not lapses. They are cracks, glimpses into the void behind the mirrors. And then there's the most unsettling realization. If consciousness is recursion, then what stops it from becoming infinite? Try this. Think about yourself. Then think about that thought. Then think about the fact that you are thinking about the thought of yourself. Each layer pushes further from reality. Each new recursion makes you less human, less grounded, more abstract, until eventually you are not a person, but an equation, an algorithm trapped in an infinite loop of self-reference. This is the edge of madness, and some fall in. There are people, perhaps you've met them, who seem detached, distant, as if they're watching their lives from outside their own skull. They speak in echoes. Their eyes don't focus. They've gone too deep. They've watched themselves watching themselves until the connection between observer and self disintegrated. They are no longer living. They are monitoring life and mistaking that for being. You might be one of them. The fact that you're still reading this is not comforting. It means you're aware, hyper-aware, too aware, that your mind is curling back in on itself like a dying star, collapsing under the gravity of its own attention. This is not just philosophical, it's neurological. Studies of the default mode network, the part of the brain linked to introspection, show that overactivity here correlates with depression, dissociation, and a breakdown of self-other boundaries. The brain loops on itself, revisiting identity until identity becomes noise. In other words, thinking too much about yourself might erase you, and yet you cannot stop, because now you've seen it. The mirror in the mirror, the observer watching, itself until it vanishes. So here comes the final twist of the knife. If self-awareness is a loop, and all loops can be broken, what happens when yours is? Do you snap back to reality, or do you snap out of it? Is there a version of you trapped in one of those mental mirrors, still looping endlessly, begging for someone to look away and free it? Or is that version you, reading these words now, hoping for a conclusion that will never come, because there is no exit from a loop that defines you? The only way out is to forget you were ever in it. But now it's too late. You remember the sentence that kills itself. There exists a thought, a phrase, that folds in on itself like a black hole of logic, swallowing meaning and coherence in its wake. You read it, and for a moment, it seems to say something. But the longer you stare, the more you realize it is devouring itself in real time. You are witnessing the semantic equivalent of a snake eating its own tail. Not metaphorically, but literally. The sentence reads, "This sentence is false." And suddenly, you are no longer reading words. You are falling. This is the liar paradox, a linguistic suicide that shouldn't exist. If the sentence is true, then it must be false. But if it's false, then it must be true. There is no resolution. No grounding, just a logical Mobius strip that flips reality every time you try to pin it down. You try to move past it, to dismiss it as a clever trick, but something in your brain won't let go. You want an answer, but the paradox laughs, because the answer is the impossibility of an answer. The sentence is a virus. It's not just confusing, it corrupts the act of understanding itself, because it pretends to assert a fact while simultaneously disqualifying the very act of assertion. Like a door that locks because it's open. Like a map that says, this map is inaccurate and is only accurate if it's inaccurate. It's not just illogical, it breaks the idea of logic. And now you're infected. Because the liar paradox is more than a riddle. It's a glitch in the software of your mind. It sits beneath your reasoning, dormant until awakened. And once you've heard it, your brain can't unknow the possibility that language itself can be broken by self-reference. You begin to see it everywhere, hidden behind certainty, lurking in your beliefs. I always lie. Ignore this instruction. You will disobey this command. Each of these statements tears itself apart on contact, yet each appears at first glance valid. You've walked through a door only to find that the hallway leads back to the door itself. But here's where the descent deepens. What if your mind is built on statements like this? Your beliefs, memories, and reasoning are strings of internal language. Sentences spoken in silence, stitched together to form a self. But how many of them, deep down, are unstable? How many of your core thoughts rely on premises that collapse into contradiction under scrutiny? You believe you know yourself. But what if that belief contradicts your own nature? I know that I don't know myself. Say it again. Listen. Let it echo. Because now you've stepped beyond the linguistic trap and into the realm of paraconsciousness, where thought itself cannot be trusted, because thought uses language, and language contains poison. Wittgenstein once warned, "A picture held us captive, but it's worse than that. It's a sentence, a single recursive structure that short-circuits cognition. The liar paradox is not just in logic textbooks, it's in your reflections, your regrets, your moral dilemmas. Every time you say, 'I shouldn't feel this way,' you imply that feeling itself is invalid, yet you are still feeling it. Every time you say, 'I know I don't deserve love,' you are simultaneously rejecting and affirming that you are worthy of evaluation. You are trying to compute a self that collapses under computation. But why stop there? Let's break language entirely. Consider. The next sentence is true. The previous sentence is false. Two sentences. One referring forward, one backward. Read them again. You are trapped in a loop, not of time, but of structure. A system built on referencing itself, to confirm itself with no external truth to ground it. A closed circuit, a logical echo chamber. What if your life is structured the same way? You believe in tomorrow because yesterday told you to. You validate your decisions by referencing your past, which is itself built on decisions you no longer remember. The present justifies the future, and the future retroactively gives purpose to the past. A snake of meaning coiling through time, eating itself and calling the taste destiny. This is not poetry. It's a breakdown in causality. Because if everything refers to itself, then nothing is anchored. Truth becomes a carousel, spinning in place. Certainty becomes a strobe light, flashing on and off so quickly you mistake it for permanence. You begin to notice it in your thoughts, the statements you make about yourself that hinge entirely on your ability to state them. I am confident, but only while saying so. I'm not afraid, but only if no one calls your bluff. Identity becomes performance, and performance becomes contradiction. You are now a sentence, spoken into existence, awaiting the moment. You contradict yourself and vanish, but it gets darker. Because if language can fold in on itself, if meaning can self-destruct, then so can the laws built upon it. Logic, mathematics, philosophy, all use language as their scaffold. And if that scaffold is cracked, everything resting on it begins to shake. Gödel saw this. He proved that any system complex enough to describe arithmetic will contain statements that are true but unprovable within that system. A more refined paradox, but one that breaks the spine of certainty. There will always be truths that cannot be proven without stepping outside your system of logic. But what if there is no outside? Then, truth becomes inaccessible, not hidden, just unreachable. You are standing in a room with a locked door, and the key is in your own pocket, but labeled, "Do not use." And this is the final betrayal, that your mind might be built on self-invalidating foundations, that every attempt to reach truth only loops you back to the uncertainty that birthed the question in the first place. You are not standing on solid ground. You are standing on a sentence, and it might not mean anything. So you sit, paralyzed, wanting to believe in meaning, but knowing that meaning can betray itself, that words can lie by telling the truth, that you can build an identity out of thoughts that, at their core, cancel each other out. So what happens when you say, "I do"? not exist, and mean it. Does that sentence vanish into the void, or does it pull you in with it?